Welcome to yet another episode of Books to Boardrooms with Dr. Kiran. Today we have Ms. Nicolita. Nicolita is the head of business development at 4Pi. Nicolita.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks. Pleasure is all mine. So Nicolita, can you just give a little background about yourself?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me here. Yes, as you said, I'm the head of business development for 4Pi. 4Pi is a credit risk consultancy company based in UK. We are part of the largest credit risk consultancy company in UK called Foremost that was established in 2011. Last year we started to deliver our solutions and services in the Middle East, and I'm responsible for the expansion and the delivery of the solution here in the Middle East.
So when you talk about the credit risk consultancy, so let's start by asking, what is credit risk?
Right question. Yes. So credit risk actually it's the risk that is associated to any credit or any product that the banks, the financial institution, or any other type of institution is offering to a person or to a company. A product that requires a payment back of the credit that has been asked to that specific institution.
Okay, so do you think that, so do you have countries having credit ratings, individuals having credit ratings? Is it all related to banking as an industry, or it can apply to every industry?
Actually, it's applied to different industries, not only to banks and financial institutions, which is actually very interesting. In certain countries, they adopt credit risk and credit risk frameworks also in industries as real estate, telco, like Du and Etisalat, what we have here in UAE, courts. So it is actually not related only to financial institutions, but also to other type of industries where a credit is given to the customer.
I think today everything is related to credit. No transaction happens in cash, or countries and organizations are moving towards more of a digital currencies and credit way of doing works. So that's the reason the credit consultancies are getting more popular?
That's the reason. The other reason is that there are regulation behind. So every country has certain regulation in respect to the credit risk. Here in UAE, we have certain regulations that are, of course, imposed by the Central Bank of UAE, that are also imposed by the Credit Bureau, Al Etihad Credit Bureau, that actually is my previous employer. And it is actually important for every organization to keep under the control, the monitoring of the risk within the portfolio, and to also sign certain provisions based on the risk analysis.
So that means that as a credit risk consultant, you guys are doing a lot of solutions, or you provide a lot of solutions to various type of stakeholders. So can you just take me through the various solutions as a credit risk consultant offer in the market, or your organization 4Pi is offering in the UAE market?
Yes. As credit consultancy company, of course, we offer solutions that are related to the risk. Risk related to the credit offered by the banks or financial institution. We have solutions that are related to the regulation. For example, IFRS 9 models. These are models that are very important for every country, not only here, where the banks need to assess the probability of losses and then assign certain provisions. This reporting, it's going to the central bank every month. So it's really important, let's say, solution that we are delivering, and we develop more than 40 algorithms and for IFRS 9. Another solution, and I'm very attached to it probably because of my previous experience in the credit bureau space, it's the scorecard development. The scorecard, it's linked to what we all know, credit score. However, you might have heard that the banks are also assessing the customer internally before deciding to offer a product, a financial product, a credit, a personal loan, a credit card. So these internal scorecards are developed by companies as 4Pi, where actually we help the organization to define this algorithm that will give them the probability of a customer of defaulting in the next X months. X months, usually it's 12 months. It's very important for us before developing the model to understand the portfolio of the customer, if this bank is more focused on individuals customers or on SMEs customers. You might know that now in UAE we have a lot of attention on the SME development, the startups that are launching, that are supported also by the government. So it's really important for the banks to have an internal model on top of the credit score that comes from the bureau to well assess the risk that they will have in disbursing this facility that can be a credit limit, an overdraft, a personal loan or car loan for the individual or for the company.
So I can understand there are two different offerings on your side. So one being because of the regulatory requirement, the banks need to really estimate what sort of provision for bad debts they might need to allocate, because if the banks fail, that's a failure of the organization or the country itself, right? So you tell that, okay, this is the percentage. If you're given 100 million loan, keep 2-3% as your provision for bad debt, so that if something happens, you're well covered. And that's done on a monthly basis.
Yes.
So that's really good. I think the Central Bank of UAE has implemented that. And then on the other side, you have a balanced scorecard for individuals and organizations for getting credit from the financial institutions. I think that's the role which you were playing before when you were part of the Al Ittihad Credit Bureau. So can you just tell me from that experience, so what is a credit score and why is credit score so important for individuals, organizations who basically needs credit? Because this is something very, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 years, it's become very popular in this part of the world. But so can you just give some more information about, and now every country in the world, they have these credit bureaus in every country. So you can get a credit score which know how financially strong you are, or what is the capability, the risk the institutions have when they lend money to you. So can you just give a little more idea about the role of these type of credit bureaus, and as an individual, as an organization, what we should be taking into consideration to have a better credit rating?
Yes, sure. So as you correctly said, every country in the world has a credit bureau. The credit bureau, it's an entity. It can be a public entity or a private entity that actually gathers all the information in the country in respect to the credit related to the individuals and companies. So actually, the credit bureau, it's, let's think from an IT perspective, a data warehouse where all this information is gathered. Many credit bureaus in the world have positive information and negative information, meaning information about the people they pay in time and information about the people they didn't pay in time. However, few credit bureaus, they are also gathering information that are not strictly related to the financial institutions, but rather to non-financial institutions. And here in UAE, Al Ittihad Credit Bureau, my previous employer, it's at the moment gathering information from telco, Etisalat and Du, as well from courts. So it's actually information related to your exposure in the market and to all the payments that you eventually have to make every month. The score, it's actually just a product of the credit bureau. The credit score, it's very similar to the scorecard internal that the banks are using. However, it's created this model of giving the probability of default of this customer in the next X months based on the entire country data. So it's quite effective. However, you understand that based on the portfolio type, sometimes the internal scorecard might be more accurate than the one that is developed at country level. So that's why the need of having both, right? Of course, it's very important to have a good credit score. Myself being in the credit bureau industry right after university, so for more than 10 years, I always felt that I have to educate even my friends, my family, about keeping a good credit score. Why? Which are the benefits of having a good credit score? Actually, first of all, will allow you to take further credit in the future. right? So as soon as you pay in time all your installments for this specific personal loan, when this specific personal loan will finish, you will be able to apply for a mortgage maybe in the future in your life. Another very interesting aspect that not many would know is that it will allow you to get better conditions in terms of your interest rate, better conditions in terms of your payments. For example, here in UAE, where many people are having a tenancy contract, where we were used to pay every month the monthly rent, eventually having a better or a very good credit score will allow you to pay maybe every 6 months. So we'll give you these better conditions in terms of payments. I think it's very important that every person knows that they can download their own credit report and own credit score. Al Etihad Credit Bureau has a website for doing that, an application. There are 2 offices in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And everyone should be proud of having a good credit score. You know, in other countries like US and China, this is like your personal identification. You will go anywhere and you'll say, my score is 800. Which is a really good score. Usually the score is between 300 and 900. 900 being the best credit score you could have, meaning a very low risk, a very low probability of you not paying that credit facility.
So that's quite a lot of information. So if I say a lot of misconception is if you have you are applying for a loan, you signed the document for getting a credit score and you thought that it is just what the Etihad Credit Bureau, what they provide is your score. But in reality, you are saying that it's not only your repayment to the banks and credit cards, but your payment of Etisalat bills on time or your Diva bills on time. So whatever is your outgoing, whether the rent checks, etc., determine your score. So we need to be careful about that. That's one. And the second side, the banks can not only rely on the Etihad's credit score, but they also can have services like your organization for an internal assessment of the customer based on their past experiences, current experiences, so that the bank can take much better action in terms of whether they want to again overrule the other score and give more credit or not. So that's one of the most important things. Right. I think that's something which everyone should be aware about, and this is going to be there going forward in every country in the world. So credit is going to play a very important role, and you never know when it is very important that you need to take a credit, and that time you should not be kept out just because you have a bad credit score. So knowing that importance, so can you tell some ways in which an individual, like for example, you said I can go and download my report. So what if I download my report and I see my score is 400 or 500, and I don't have any immediate needs, but I want to improve my score so that but when I need, I can get whatever money I want. So can you just give some from your experience being a consultant, being part of the Etihad Credit Bureau, worked with the banks, understanding the market scenario, situations here, what one should do so that he always have a great credit score?
Sure. If I have to think for an individual, it's a bit easier than for a company. Of course, keeping the number of products, of credit products active, it's the first solution. So if you have more than one credit card, but you use only one credit card, then you should just close the others, because having multiple credit cards will just increase your exposure, your possibility of using also the second or the third. So even if you don't use it, people would say, I have 5 credit cards because every bank called me and I just got it in case I will need it, I have it, but I use only one. Well, if you use only one, then you should just close the previous one, because then your total exposure is related to that credit limit of that one credit card. And this will be my first recommendation. The second one, of course, you should pay in time your installments or your balance for the credit card. If you have difficulties, maybe you lost your job or some expenses that are not foreseen, the best is to speak with your bank, with your provider, to understand how to eventually restructure your payment in order for you to still be able to pay eventually a part of that initial installment. However, you will just show in their respect that you are honest, you would like to pay, however you have a problem in this period of your life that doesn't allow you to pay in full that installment. And it's important to also pay your checks, right? Because here in UAE we pay our rent usually by checks. And also this information is displayed in our credit report at Al Etihad Credit Bureau. So paying the checks in time, it's also a very important aspect. And to conclude, as I just told you, Du and Etisalat are also sending the data to Al Etihad Credit Bureau. All the information are related to the postpaid contracts. So though it's maybe a contract of 300 dirham and sometimes maybe you just don't pay because you forgot or you are in vacation, however, it's always good to remember and pay in time even that small amount.
So if I see my score is low and whatever things what you told, if I apply in my real life, so maybe in a 6 to 8 months I can improve my score and by basically taking care of these
exactly.
small
So
things.
the timing of recovering, let's say, and improving the score is between 6 and 12 months.
Oh, so 6 to 12 months. So you at least get a year time. So best prepare, not only look at a credit score when you really need a credit, but look at much before so that you can improvise it.
Yes, and this is actually the very good aspect that every country provides the way to the customer to have the credit report and the credit score at his own phone, right? So at his own house. You don't need to walk to the office of the credit bureau to download your credit report and your credit score. There are countries where actually you receive a notification on your mobile phone if you sign for a certain subscription that would tell you that your credit score decreased and will even tell you the reason why.
So is it going to happen in this market soon?
Hopefully it will happen also here, of course. Let's not forget that Al Etihad Credit Bureau was launched in 2015. I arrived in Dubai in 2016 to guide the implementation and the release on the market. So it's quite a young credit bureau, but believe me, it's at a really advanced stage respect to other countries that they maybe started even 10, 15 years ago.
So you told about multiple types of credit risk, by default, etc. And I heard a new terminology, or not new terminology, but something which is too much in demand or in the news right now is about climate change. So is there any relationship between climate change and credit risk?
Yes, of course. Actually, this is one of our services as well, climate change risk framework. Many countries are starting to look through this actually aspect because it's a very aspect also from financial point of view. You might have heard about green financing. Green financing meaning that you will, as a bank, analyze also climate change risk and disburse credit based on this analysis. So a very easy example, I would say, if a bank has to disburse a mortgage for a person that is going to build a new house on a land that is not a stable land, or in a climate that it's unstable, where it's raining a lot or maybe it's very cold, or in a climate like in UAE where it's very hot. So how the climate change actually will impact the risk of that person in respect to his payment behavior to the bank.
So that means even climate change we need to take into consideration because it can impact our interest rate, right? So if you are in a very high risk area, whether it's too hot or too rainy, that means the customer need to pay a very high amount of interest rate for securing a loan.
It of course be assessed by the bank, and I would not be so drastic that at this stage it's not that the banks will not anymore disburse credit in such areas. However, they will have to assess this. Actually, we had here in UAE an initiative from the Central Bank of UAE asking the banks to consider climate change risk in their stress testing scenarios. So this is another type of services where we can help our customers, and the stress testing scenarios and exercise, usually it requires once a year by the central banks. And just think to it about similar to the recovery disaster in an IT environment. So the banks are requested by the central bank to think to different scenarios, good and bad scenarios, and how this will impact actually their portfolio, their profitability, their losses, and so on.
So this is going to be a common phenomena across the region. You will see these things happening across the region.
Yes, actually this is one of that aspect that we try to anticipate the market needs. At the moment, it's not a real need. So the banks are not all the banks here in Middle East are starting to look through the climate change risk analysis and framework, though the central bank started to, let's say, put these thought in the bank's mind. However, not all of them, they have really a deadline and a plan to apply it. But this is also our role here in the market, to anticipate the market needs and guide the customer to have internally the right implementation in their house.
So basically, as a consultant, now your job is like much more widened, right? You look at the 360 degrees, not only individual, it's the market, the industry, even the climate of the region plays a very important role when it comes to calculating the credit risk. That's pretty interesting. Thanks a lot, Nicoletta. I'm sure this is a great information for people around the world, that this is happening in every country. It is not only happening in UAE. So whoever students and anybody who's listening to this particular speech from you, can take care of their credit score at a very young age, because they plan to buy a car, they plan to buy a mortgage. Even when organizations, they also need a better credit rating, so that they are exposed to better credit, SME credit, or bigger organization, because nowadays investments is needed for technology and other things, and it's impossible for people or entrepreneurs to fund it straight away. So having a great credit score will really help them to achieve their dreams and aspirations. And I'm sure as a consultant, you guys are doing a good job. And thanks a lot. I will definitely get feedbacks from my viewers. And if they have further more questions, I'll invite you once more again to clarify those questions. And thanks a lot for a wonderful session.
Thank you so much.
It's great to understand credit risk. And we all know what's credit risk only when we apply a loan. But hearing from a credit consultant basically about the various role they play when it comes to banks, regulatory authorities, individuals, SMEs, it's very important. And here today we had Nicoletta, who shared quite a lot of information, and I'm sure we all will be getting much benefited from what she spoke to us today. Thank you. Till I see you with another guest, signing off. Bye-bye.